Anytown, USA. The day has not yet dawned. Most are still slumbering away in their comfortable beds. As far as the citizenry knows, today will be just like any other day as of late. Many are worried about the stock market and the uncertainty of their retirement funds. Others are consumed with the upcoming elections and how the different candidates will impact their lives and freedoms. Still others are concerned about the precarious condition of the housing market. Unbeknownst to this sleeping community, the concerns of yesterday are about to be left far behind. Not everyone is asleep on this particular morning. In clusters throughout the city, a force is gathered to receive their final instructions and assignments. They are dispatched to every intersection. Throughout the community, they are strategically placed to form an impenetrable net to capture all who venture out. Others among them are given incursion assignments. With military precision, teams are dispatched to carry out their instructions. Doors are reduced to piles of lumber with a single blow as teams begin the process of entry on a house-by-house basis. Panic-stricken families are led into the streets where they are forced to remain before their homes in orderly lines. Many are still in shock, not quite sure what is taking place. It is far too quiet. Wide-eyed and filled with fear, they comply with the armed men. The whole process is systematic, and ordered chaos reigns on the streets of Anytown, USA. Then it happens. A young man standing at the curb line allows his eyes to dart to his left and to his right. He nervously surveys the situation and tries to take it all in. Meanwhile, his mind is racing. Suddenly, he breaks ranks and runs as fast as his legs will carry him. His plan is to get as far from the street as quickly as possible and to make his way into relative safety of the backyards. But he doesn't make it that far. A short burst of gunfire fills the air, and the young man topples head over feet. An instant later, he lies lifeless in the street, a pool of blood forming beneath him. The silence is broken. Sheer terror kicks in as many look on. Some allow involuntary screams to slip out while others begin sobbing. Children in particular are susceptible, and their parents do their best to console them without disobeying instructions. What seems like an eternity, in fact, takes place in only a few minutes. The militant's team leader makes his way to the roof of one of the troop carriers. He barks out his instructions with a megaphone. At gunpoint, the masses are herded to the trucks for transport. The cloud of fear in the air is so thick that it's visible. Yet each does as instructed. The blood, which still flows down the middle of the street, serves as a reminder of what will happen should they do otherwise. Positioned in pre-planned areas throughout the city, intake areas are prepared to process the detainees. There is an overwhelming show of force and firepower on hand to encourage cooperation. Few dare to do anything other than what they're instructed. Upon deboarding, the crowds are ushered into specific areas based on their age and sex. Males over the age of 13 form one line. Females over the age of 13 form another. Children over the age of 5 are pulled out and taken into yet another area, which is somewhere out of sight. As they are led away, many cry out, "Mommy! Daddy!" Yet their parents are powerless. They know the penalty for breaking ranks, and so they watch with tear-filled eyes and sunken hearts. Finally, the troops filter through the crowds and take the children under the age of 5. Many cling to their parents and refuse to let go, but their resistance is futile. Seemingly without emotion, soldiers pry them from their parents' arms. As they are carried away, they kick and scream. Their innocent minds don't grasp rationality. They only know that they are being taken away from those who have cared for and nurtured them since birth. They are tired, hungry, and terrified. At the head of each line there is a table. Behind each is a team of military personnel. Each prisoner is cataloged one by one. Each is asked a series of questions based on their answers. Each is given a color-coded, numbered tag. Nervously, you step forward to the table to be processed. Name, date of birth, social security number, occupation, religious belief. The last question you stammer. Christian? You're handed a black tag and instructed to proceed to the waiting area assigned to your color. It doesn't take long to realize that those in this area identified themselves as Christians. Time moves in slow motion as you try to remain silent. In your heart you pray, Lord, please protect us. Yet there is a sinking feeling you cannot escape. After enough are gathered in this area, everyone is instructed to load another waiting truck. The ride over the streets you have known for so many years suddenly seems foreign. For the first time you travel them as a prisoner, and you can't help but wonder if you'll ever see them again. After what seems like an eternity, the truck slows and eventually comes to a stop. After idling for a few minutes, the driver hits the gas again. It's not until the truck passes through that you see the barricades and razor wire. A lump rises in your throat. Try as you might, you can't push it back down. Fear is replaced with panic, and you know that the circumstances are dire. You're ushered into a large crowd of people. A man stands at the front of the masses with a megaphone. As he places it to his mouth, his voice booms. You have been brought to this place to be exterminated. A new world order is being unveiled, and you are standing in the way of progress. It is our pleasure to rid the world of you radical Christians. He pauses for several seconds before continuing. However, if you have been misidentified, now is the time to say so. If you were mistaken in your answer about being a Christian, we will be glad to reclassify you. He points to a vacant area with a red X and says, for those of you who would like to change your answer, make your way over to the red X for reclassification. Then he peel away from the crowd and begin making their way over to the red X. As you stand there, your mind races. If you stand firm, death is certain. However, if you walk over to that red X, it is in effect denying Christ. On this day, your measure of faith is being put to the test, and the choice you make will change everything. What will you do? Our country is facing troubled times. We see it on Wall Street and on Main Street. We see it in our schools and in our homes. Yet while these times we face are new to us, they have been repeated throughout history. Nations rise and fall. Difficult times come and go. For over 200 years, Christians have lived relatively sheltered lives in our country. We have been permitted freedom in our faith without having to pay anything significant for it. Yet what we have known may not always be the case. What if our faith was put to the true test? Considering the story of Daniel, I picture in my mind what it must have been like for the young men who were paraded through the streets of Babylon. It's a story that's easy to read and take for granted. Yet what must it have felt like to be taken prisoner and led into a foreign land? What must it have felt like to have later received Darius's order that no one was to worship anyone other than him? Yet when his faith was placed to the test, Daniel remained firm. He continued doing what he had always done. 3 times a day he prayed. No executive order could override his faith. Knowing full well the consequences, he made a choice, and it led him to a den filled with hungry lions. While he likely experienced fear as he faced the great Persian king, Babylon was overthrown during the time that Daniel lived there. He could not be shaken. Around the world, Christians are being martyred at unprecedented rates. In the 20th century, more Christians died for their faith than in all the other centuries combined. So the question that begs to be asked is this: what about the 21st century? Are we living in the generation where, like Daniel, our faith will be put to the test? If so, will you stand firm? This is not a question to be taken lightly, as the choice we make is sure to be the greatest one we will ever face. As an afterthought, I want to clarify something. This video is not meant to promote fear. In the first century, many followers of Christ were led to their death in colosseums and on crosses. Yet for all the persecution, the plans of Nero had an unintended effect. Christianity grew and flourished. The faith of Christians was firmly rooted. They knew that accepting Christ may eventually lead to their death, and yet they abandoned self to follow him. The same is true today in many countries around the world. Choosing to follow Jesus is not a matter taken lightly. In the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, just to name a few, followers of Christ face persecution and death. Yet they remain firm in their faith. In the face of persecution, their numbers are growing. The United States is an exception to the rule, and we are one of the only nations experiencing a decline in Christianity. It's time that we wake up and face the facts. Choosing to be a Christian won't always be a take it or leave it decision. Sacrifice will be measured not in our decision to get up and go to church on Sunday, but in our willingness to lay our lives down for the sake of our faith. Should this day come, each of us will choose for ourselves. I close with the words of Jesus spoken in Matthew 10:28. Do not fear those who kill the body but are unable to kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both body and soul in hell.